Corruption. I believe Nigerians know that we have got a Herculean task, and the way we have approached it certainly is to make sure that the military, the police, and other law enforcement agencies have really been properly trained, equipped, and that their morale is high.
The president, for sure, knows that curing Nigeria of corruption will contribute in no small measure to reducing the economic predicament the nation is currently faced with. It is no secret that a lot of damage has been done to the nation's economy by these corrupt men.
You're welcome to another edition of your program, Towards a Greater Nigeria, and I still remain your anchor, Omotayo Omotosho. Last week we beamed our searchlight on the anti-corruption crusade of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and we did tell you we'll be bringing you the concluding part of that expose. That's what we're bringing you this evening, and I have the pleasure of still speaking with our very own Mr. Debo Adefoloju, a political analyst, an economist, and a public relations consultant. You're welcome again, Mr. Adefoloju. Last week we couldn't finish. There were some salient questions I would have wanted to ask. So let me set the ball rolling. On the issue of immunity, we do have our chief executives and their deputies with immunity clause. What's your take on this?
It is oxymoronic. You cannot be in a position of authority and be responsible for nothing. You are responsible for something, and you are responsible to somebody or some people. In a situation like Nigeria, in our own country, chief executives, national and state and local government are responsible to their constituents. Elsewhere, when aspersion is cast against your character, you have several choices. But the honorable one in other clime is that even before you are found not guilty, for that aspersion being cast against your character, most people will resign. They are not going to the Supreme Court over it. You have done XYZ. If it is said about me that I've done XYZ, it will impede my ability to perform as an executive in the position I have been placed, because I have that cloud over my head. In Nigeria, we seem to be immune to that type of sensitivity. We need to look at the present administration and Mr. President. What he is telling us with his body language is there will be no sacred cows. If you have done anything short of what you are supposed to do, you are required to be answerable not just to him, but to the people of Nigeria. Consequently, the law will come after you. If you are proven not guilty, wonderful. If you are proven guilty, it's not a political witch hunt. You should just give the restitution and pay for whatever you have done in terms of going to jail or paying fines. But if you look at those who had taken away pension funds in the billion and were fined 750,000.
Plea bargain, they call it.
Plea bargaining in that type of context is not congruent. It does not fit. The penalty for the crime does not fit. We If you do the crime, please do the time. Pay the fine and
If you
do
do
the
the
time.
crime, do the time.
Yes, that is what President Buhari is saying. And it's not too much. If you're going to do billion, trillion naira worth of crime, you should be able to do 5 years, 15 years in jail and pay back the money. Because you have negatively affected many people's lives.
Negatively.
Pensioners will die without getting their funds. And you are holding their money. The money should be taken from you, and you should be able to do the appropriate time by law. That is what the man has been saying. And that is what we should join him in exposing this type of anomalies in our society.
Real anomalies, Mr. Adefoloju. Do we have some sort of thing they call plea bargains in the developed economies?
When you
You've worked there for years before you came back?
Yes, there's plea bargaining, but there is no immunity from the law. You are not above the law. You can plea bargain, but you are not above the law. It must be seen that the law has been applied on a level playing field to everybody. Bill Clinton was impeached by the House of Assembly. Spiro Agnew had to resign. Richard Nixon, he resigned from the presidency. Authorities are questioned in other crimes. There is nothing like immunity. When you overstep your boundary, your legal boundaries, you are supposed to be recalled by the same people whom you are representing, that you have left the ranch, come back to the ranch. That is why there is no immunity. In Nigeria, you've left the ranch, you don't even know your way back, and nobody dare tell you to come back. And even if you do come back, you're not paying any restitution. You've just taken people's pension and goodbye. And you pay 700 and something versus the billions that you are taking. It's not acceptable. It's not sustainable. That is what the President Muhammad Buhari is saying. We cannot continue to do it like this. And those who have done it most recently, very easy, bring back the money. Then you can now plea bargain whether you are going to pay additional fine or whether you're going to go to jail. Fine, but you cannot just do it scot-free.
Where does the issue of taxes come in here?
Two things are certain in life in other places. You will die and you will pay the internal revenue, your taxes, due. In Nigeria, when we get to the point where everybody knows that they have to pay their dues, even if you have stolen 2 trillion, 5 or 10% of that, the government needs to see it.
In their records.
In their records. If you are buying those luxury cars, luxury boats, and you've got these fantastic homes, helicopters, jets, yachts, all of those things are good. You deserve them. The government also deserves to have you pay luxury taxes. You cannot have those items, or you should not have those items, without paying the appropriate taxes. When we are paying these appropriate taxes, you really wouldn't ask somebody questions. You would just note by public record that you paid 10 million to the internal revenue. Consequently, you had 100 million. That
would be 10%.
That would be the 10% of it. When we include that one vigorously into our socio-political system, it will not be a situation where we are having adjournment of cases. It will be very simple. Have you paid taxes on the 100 million in your account? If you have not, it is a felonious offense. And if you have, we'll have to look for something else. What were you doing, or what did you do, or what have you done that merited your acquiring 100 million naira in your account?
We must ask questions.
We must ask questions. And there is no public office in Nigeria that chief executive that is being paid 100 million.
Not at all.
And if there is, then they need to be paying appropriate taxes. If they aren't available, the next thing we should ask is, if you have 100 million in your account, how did you get it? We should ask those questions. If you cannot answer properly, meaning I sold something, I bought something, I sold my father's house and I bought my mother's house, all of those things, we should be able to follow the money. because we have refused to follow the money in the previous administrations. This administration now is following the money nationally and internationally. We need to encourage them, because that is how we will be able to unravel things that seem to be mysterious to us. There's no mystery to it. If suddenly I am appointed so and so, and I don't have a house, and now I have 10 houses. I don't have a car, now I have 24 cars. How much are they paying me on this appointed job? As a minister of anything, chief executive of anything, governor of anything, vice president of anything, how much are they paying me? It's simple arithmetic. If you look at how much they're paying me, and look at the stuff that I have acquired in such a short span of time, you will know that I didn't get this one from working. It must be plenty of gifts.
Stealing, but it's stealing, corruption.
And if it is not gifts, then I'm stealing, and it is corruption. And in another place, they call them kickbacks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adefoloju. We'll take a short break as they have 2-3 other questions to ask. We'll come back to the issues in a few seconds. For those of you that are just joining us, we're still looking at how we can strengthen the anti-corruption crusade of President Muhammadu Buhari. Nigerians say it's high time we all say no to corruption. We'll be back in a few seconds. Don't go away.
Experts say that the ongoing war against corruption by President Buhari is in the right direction, as it is a fight for the soul and substance of Nigeria as a nation, a moral battle for virtue and righteousness in our land. Apart from barefaced theft of public funds, corruption has also been cited as the main reason for poor policy choices, the prevalence of poverty in the midst of plenty, and waste of resources in the country. In his words, Mr. Buhari says, and we quote, "Corruption in our country is so endemic that it constitutes a parallel system. It is the primary reason for poor policy choices, waste, and of course, barefaced theft of public resources. It is the main reason why a potentially prosperous country struggles to feed itself and provide jobs for millions. The hundreds of thousands of deaths in the infant maternal mortality statistics, the hundreds of thousands of annual deaths from preventable diseases are traceable to the greed and corruption of a few. This is why we must see it as an existential threat. If we don't kill it, it will kill us." End of quote. He said Nigerians should return to the traditional values of integrity, fairness, diligence, good neighborliness, and honesty espoused in Islam and Christianity to address challenges confronting the nation. It should be noted that the renewed and heightened interest corruption has generated has in no way diminished the importance of other hot-button national topics, such as terrorism, adjusting to the fall in oil prices, and national unity. What Buhari requires is a gathering of equally skilled lawyers to prosecute corruption cases. When you have such lawyers, they will ensure that any corruption case in court will be backed by material, relevant, and admissible evidence. Agreeably, President Buhari knows that Nigeria needs tough and upright judges to help with the anti-corruption agenda. Nigeria does not have to wait anymore for corruption to occur before fighting it. Corruption requires daring do, especially coming from a Buhari now bound to act within the limits of the constitution. Again, the people's voice.
Past administration is the worst that have happened to Nigerian people. This is a government to hear people stealing 10 billion. Before you hear the issue of stealing 10 billion, you hear 20 billion. Before you hear 20 billion, you hear 210 billion. Before you hear 210 billion, you hear $6 billion. Now they have gone out of Naira again. They have entered stealing this money in billions, in billions, in billions. We are there watching at them.
Because of corruption. And if we didn't kill it, many of us will start dying because our generation, we are not planning good things for our younger ones. And it will wipe all the country.
So I think that machinery of government, I'm calling on Mr. President to look into that machinery of government and let us have what? A strong judicial system where people will be tried. And I'm recommending that every corrupt
person that have taken our money should be brought to book, not minding your status. Fighting corruption is something that everyone has to, embrace. Fighting corruption is a good something in the society.
You're welcome back. For those that are just joining us, we're still looking at strengthening the anti-corruption crusade of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. The role you got to play and the role I got to play. We all have roles to play here. And that's the only way to move Nigeria forward. I have with me in the studio a political analyst, economist and public relations consultant, Mr. Adefoloju. You're welcome. My next question, looking at the ravaged areas of the Northeast through Boko Haram and the environmental degradation of the South through years of oil spillage and busting of pipelines, how do we move forward as a nation without adequately addressing this very pertinent national issue? What do we need to do that we've not done?
We cannot move forward if we do not adequately address these two delicate, pertinent issues in our national development. Just as an overview, we had Second World War. There was a Marshall Plan to revitalize, rehabilitate, and reconstruct Europe. Japan was bombed to the ground. Similar program was put in place. Right now, Nigeria have insurgency in the Northeast. The South, the sacred cow in Nigeria, the goose that is laying the golden egg in Nigeria. The whole environment there is blighted by oil spillage. Fishermen can no longer fish. Farmers can no longer farm. Men and women are having the type of cancers that we don't have institutions to treat them. As a national emergency, simultaneously, what is happening in the Northeast ought to be handled with urgency. What has happened in the South ought to be handled with urgency. The urgency of now predisposes us to getting everybody together, having our super rich philanthropists collectively from all the geopolitical regions, the Aliko Dangote, the T.Y. Danjuma, the Fọlọ́runṣọ́ Alákìjà, Tony Olumelu, Jim Ovia, Femi Otedola, Atiku Abubakar, all of these people ought to set up a reconstruction program for these two ends of Nigeria.
The Northeast?
The Northeast.
The South.
And the South. In the Northeast, there is a problem that is about to brew right immediately after the end of this Boko Haram insurgency.
And what's the problem?
Unexploded landmines. We need all the help in the world to handle that problem. Famine. People are going to be hungry.
Yeah. And the land already devastated.
Yes. Unemployment. Young and old have no jobs. The contiguous states have to have silos waiting for people to return. You feed them. We ought to have the expertise on the ground to disarm these landmines so that farming, irrigation, construction, reconstruction, all these things can take place. If we have the T.Y. Danjuma reconstruction program on and the likes
of Tony
Elumelu's,
Alakija and all that,
and they are reconstructing Northeast, revitalizing the South, boys and girls are working. The federal government can chip in what the federal government can come up with. And what immediately I can think of that the federal government can come up with is the security vote that are given to chief executive of states and their deputies, whoever they're giving it to, it ought to be dedicated to the reconstruction of these two regions for the benefit of Nigerians and Nigeria. You will not be able to live well in Nigeria if these places are not properly, adequately handled. And the way to handle them starts with the private sector, philanthropists. Where will the government find the money?
That would have been my next question.
Take it from the security vote
of chief executives.
What exactly are they securing with these monies that is greater than prosperity, peace, and harmony of the whole country? It will just be in addition to what the philanthropists will have contributed. The government will coordinate and add more to it. That's about it. But the government alone should not be left. President Muhammad Buhari should not be left with this problem as he alone should deal with it. All of us should actively get involved. We should be putting in our own tuppence. We should be adding our own, not just talking. I have money. There are children that are going to be homeless, parentless. We should have everybody, state, national assembly, adopting children. All the faith-based organizations, instead of talking about your anti-abortion, now the children are here. What are we going to do with them? They cannot disappear. No child should be left uncared for. No widow should be left uncared for. No widower should be left uncared for. None of our teeming youth should be left unemployed. The peace, prosperity, and the harmony we are asking for is when we adequately deal with these challenges that is facing us right now.
After all is said and done, how, in your opinion, do we move forward tackling the issue of corruption in our society? Nigerians are frowning at huge retirement benefits by some chief executives that they've decided to appropriate to themselves. They are frowning at the wardrobe allowances, furniture allowances of those that we voted for to go occupy public offices. And those that voted them are saying they need to be taken care of. What we asked you to do has to do with your constituencies, not your individual economy. How do we strengthen the fight against various ills of our society?
First of all, it is a disgrace that in a country like ours, with myriads of challenges, that the most important item that anybody wants to do is to give themselves 200% pension. 2 sports utility vehicles, one for myself, another for my wife. Since you had given me an opportunity to pilfer the state coffer, and since I'm no longer going to be able to pilfer it, now you will gladly give it to me.
Even when you're not serving anymore?
I hadn't served before. I just pilfered. We ought to ask ourselves, when is enough enough? Why are we not able to say, I've done the best that I can do, let me move on? Why do you have to continue living on the back of the government, the people? The government is the people are the government. Once again, if we don't ask questions, if we don't show any form of indignation, if we don't say, no, that's not why we sent you there, we will not have it done like that. This is how we ought to have it done. Salaries have not been paid of civil servants, teachers. Policemen are earning pittance. And so-called rulers are asking for 200% of anything.
As pensions when they retire.
When they retire. And they've already carted away the state's money. We ought to be able to say, no, enough. In fact, bring back what you took. Return what you took.
It's our commonwealth, isn't it?
It is ours, not yours. What is yours is the salary you were supposed to earn. Anything above the salary, you ought to answer for it. The first thing the president did was to ask for his own salary and the vice president's salary to be reduced. Ordinarily, that is just body language. That's just a show. But who else is following
That example.
that example?
Nobody has said anything afterwards.
Because the first thing a group of people did was they awarded themselves clothing allowance.
Allowances.
It simply means that they are not following the current trend. The current trend is to care for your brother. Stop showing your brother that I better pass you.
Right.
Show your brother that I care about you. I care, your problem is my problem.
And Nigeria belongs to all of us anyway.
Because it belongs to all of us. Consequently, your problem is my problem, and my problem is yours. That is what the President Muhammad Buhari has been trying to tell everybody. Those who disagree with them and those who agree with them. Follow my example. Do to others as you like them to do unto you. And if you have failed to do so, correct
Retrace
yourself.
Exactly. Retrace your steps.
And if you can't correct yourself, there should be organizations that will correct you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adefoloju. I wish we could go on and on. It's quite interesting listening to you, and we wish you continued success in your endeavors.
Thank you so much. The pleasure's been all mine.
You're welcome. Well, viewers, this is where we call it a day on Towards a Greater Nigeria. And we've been looking at ways of strengthening President Muhammadu Buhari's fight against corruption. You have heard the roles you need to play. I know the role I need to play. Let us start asking questions. When we have our leaders there, we need to ask them questions, making them accountable to the people. We shouldn't just be complacent, because when you are complacent, you are not strengthening the anti-corruption crusade. Thank you very much, Nigerians. It's been quite interesting anchoring this program. Next week promises to be yet another instructive and interesting one. And I'll be with you by God's grace. I remain your anchor, Omotayo. God bless you. Good night.